recording now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on. I sure appreciate it. Looking forward to talking with you today. And for you folks out there listening, let me see here. Let me make sure we got everything working here. Yep. Not quite, but almost.
Recorded live.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is James Roger Brown, and he's with the Post-Apocalypse Recovery Project. And this is a project, an effort for which there is no documented evidence has ever been done before in all of human history. The purpose is to manage information, knowledge, and resources to minimize the intentional disruption of social stability caused by the engineered collapse of civilization, and minimize the recovery time to develop new stable social processes among the survivors. Now, the destruction of our current civilization is being socially engineered by seriously evil people. If you want some comprehension of their delusions and realizations, read the Georgia Guidestones content. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn nailed what the Georgia Guidestones are all about. In order for men to do great evil, they must first believe they are doing good. How are you, Roger?
I'm fairly good under the circumstances. Still a little voice strained from my former interview on Coast to Coast, but I'm doing okay.
All right. Tell me, now, one of the reasons I became interested in this is that after reporting on the whole New World Order takeover since 1994 in my magazines and on this radio show, I came to the conclusion that there was only one thing that we as individuals could do, and that was basically to survive. And the method I chose was what I called Liberty Villages, which was basically a restoration of the basis of all civilizations, and that's the self-sufficient family farm. Tell me about how you got into this. Now, I know this is a libertarian project, and I urge everybody, got it up on my website, to vote for Gary Johnson, because I think he's the only choice we really have between the Republicans and Democrats. But tell me why you started this, what brought you into it, what some of your background is. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, my background is probably one that your listeners would be unfamiliar with. I am a sociologist. My overall field is sociology of knowledge, with specializations in the sociology of intelligence operations, cultural reality models, and how other cultures define and relate to the spiritual world. That sounds like a tad academic, but I'm different than any sociologist you've probably ever heard of. I knew when I graduated that the existing theories were pretty much crap, so I set out to develop a theory that was practical, was based on reality, and based on how natural processes work. And when you look at how human beings interact, it just may sound technical, but basically what you do is you modulate energy in the form of sound waves, and that activates neural structures in somebody else's noggin. Well, those neural structures can be mathematically described, and that's what I developed. And mine is the only sociological theory that actually has technological applications. And until 2004, it was a proprietary trade secret. I also used it as a basis for developing the most advanced intelligence analysis methodology that currently exists. A lot of the people that I met have provided me information from the intelligence community, and there's one individual who's now deceased, but I would encourage everyone to go view his posthumous disclosure video. His name was William Pollak, P-A-W-E-L-E-C. And if you Google his name, William Pollak, and disclosure video, you will be blown away by the information that he provides. He was the person who introduced the chip technology into the intelligence community for good intended purposes, and he watched it stolen by these dark-souled elites who actually built a manufacturing facility and produced enough chips to chip several times the current population of the Earth. They closed the plant down when they were finished and sold all the equipment. He and a friend of his tried to find out who these people were, and they killed his friend. I've done some research in this area, but basically that's that and a personal experience in the Army where Richard Nixon tried to recruit me and some other people into a nefarious enterprise he was running out of the White House. I was smart enough to say no at the time, but suffered retribution for that, which got me curious about what was actually going on under color of government authority. And I have spent the years since then. This was in the 1970s. I'm 61 now, and probably will not be around much longer myself. But all this time I've investigated how evil enterprises work through government. I've written a congressional evidence book on organized crime and organized science fraud in the child protection, mental health, and social work systems. All of those are on my website, which is www.thesociologycenter.com. And there are two other important things that your listeners might want to look at that I have not posted on my website but are circulating on the internet. The most recent one is what Americans need to know about death squads. And it includes model legislation to be enacted at the state level to protect you from death squads. While it may be admirable, if your first line of defense is your doorstep and your strategy for survival is going John Wayne with 15 or so odd men, heavily armed in full body armor, breaking into your house, you've already lost. Your strategy of setting up extended family survival farms is exactly the kind of thing that's needed, because what has happened is through the control of the media and the movie industry, they've essentially been training people to cooperate with them and commit suicide. Like I referred to John Wayne. When you look at the actual history of the collapse of civilizations in the past, there were pockets of survivors who continued to thrive more or less, but they did so because they continued cooperating and kept their cities running. At the end of the Roman Empire, areas like Wales, where the people continued to maintain the roads and the aqueducts and stuff that the Romans had built, they fared fairly well. It was the other places where it was dog eat dog that totally collapsed. So you're on the right track in advocating cooperation as key to human survival and recovery after this engineered collapse.
Now, I have said that anytime a communist regime takes over, and basically we're talking about tyranny here, so there's finding any difference between communism and fascism or Republicans and Democrats is superficial. And anytime a communist regime takes over, it's being they go after three classes of people in order. It's happened in Russia, it's happened in China, it's happened in South Africa, and it's happening here. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. They're going after the intelligentsia next, anyone that's smart enough to know what's going on. And third, they go after the law enforcement and the veterans that are still loyal to the old regime. That would be any of us that honor our oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Am I accurate on that?
Well, certainly the ones of us that are oath keepers and have publicly stated that would be high on their list. I would really encourage people to go out and the PPJ Gazette probably has the easiest to read formatted posting of it, but what Americans need to know about death squads. And the first thing I talk about is the basic problem is ideology. And I have an extensive quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who really understood why ideologies were a problem. And we not only have problems with ideologies resulting in mass killings of all of us in political organizations, but also vigilante organizations and organized crime. The street gangs have an ideology that essentially turns them into death squads. These stories about random drive-by shootings, they're not random drive-by shootings. Their ideology, which is consistent with torture squads and death squads, is that the outside people are the enemy. You should show no mercy to them. So they even have the death squad jargon like making your bones. Okay, so these gang members have to demonstrate, make their bones and demonstrate that they have no respect for anybody's life outside of the gang by going and shooting a perfect stranger. So in that sense, none of these are that are gang targeted are random drive-by shootings. They're called that because the media and the police just don't understand why they're occurring. But they're not random. They're the product of gang ideology. If that helps.
Yeah, that's now I've said many times on this show that they don't call television programming for nothing. They right now we're seeing a spate of Hollywood and television productions on zombies, and to me that really describes the people in Walmart. And to back up what you just said, the Black Panthers are intimidating voters in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah, well, they've done that, I think, for the last 2 election cycles. Yeah, and it's because they have ideology that somehow they're superior, or in the article I cite an interview with some gang members in Chicago where that reveals what their ideology is, and that basically it's to kill, rob, and steal because they weren't born in Beverly Hills or wherever, and don't have it handed to them. The police hate them, and God forbid it occur to them because they're violent fools. as a reason that police focus attention on them. But there's one of the things in the articles, I have a link to a British historian by the name of Woods, who wrote an article, History Repeats Itself, comparing what's going on now, with individuals and events that also occurred during the collapse of the Roman Empire. And it's basically the same thing. You've got greedy people wasting tax money on, in Roman times it was orgies and feasts where they ordered peacock tongues by the ton and used tax revenues to pay for these orgies. And you've got Bernie Madoff and his clones now on Wall Street that are running all kinds. He was one of the ones that have gotten caught, but the bankers are still out there, even though it's obvious what they're doing. Nobody's prosecuting them. They're just suing one another for damages. If you can imagine that. Now, these people ought to be in jail or on their way to jail, and instead they're suing each other for damages.
Now, I've got up on my website here a couple of things here. One is a quote from President John F. Kennedy just before his assassination. He said, there's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. Now, I've recommended to people over the years to read a document, 200-year-old document, called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And of course, if you do that, if you say that to anybody, somebody who is probably Jewish or programmed will start yelling and screaming at you, "That's a forgery! Don't you know that's a forgery?" But whoever wrote it, I maintain, has been dead a long time. And it doesn't matter who wrote it, it matters who's using it today. Then I have this quote from 2001, October 3rd, 2001, from Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, who said, "We, the Jewish people, control America, and the Americans know it." Now, does that make me anti-Semitic for passing that information on to people?
Well, first of all, you need to understand what anti-Semitic really means. A Semite is somebody who speaks a Semitic language, and that language groups includes Palestinian, Arabic, a number of other languages. So when somebody calls you an anti-Semitic, they're accusing you of hating people who speak certain languages. And how the Jews have taken that bizarre concept and somehow turned it into a dirty concept that you're attacking Jews somehow selectively. When somebody accuses me of that, I just tell them that I don't care what language they speak.
Now, the problem I have with this is the whole dual citizen concept. How can you honor...
Yeah, that should be illegal.
It should be. It certainly should be.
Yes.
And we have dual citizens in charge of our homeland security, which is nothing more than the Stasi or the KGB recreated. And we've got the same type of people that Solzhenitsyn wrote about, warned us about, in charge of our homeland security, in charge of our prisons. And just as a little aside there, we have more people in prison in this country, the land of the free and the home of the brave, than any other country out there. I also want to give you a couple of other facts here. In the First World War, 10% of the people killed in the First World War were civilians. In the Second World War, 50% were civilians. And we have a third world war predicted and slated by the Masons, which may or may not be have anything to do with the Jews, but Albert Pike, Master Mason, Morals and Dogma, says we will have a third world war with the Muslims, and that looks like that's being created and pushed by our media, by our television, and even by our so-called patriots in the Tea Party like Sarah Palin. Some comments, sir.
Well, operating on the theory of the enemy of my enemy being my friend, our true enemy is Israel, actually Zion and Zionists, but certainly focused through Israel. We should actually be allies with the Arabs, not fighting them. But
divide and
takes
conquer.
7 or 8 years to reverse that.
Divide and conquer is the oldest maxim in warfare, and that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is it's not just the Israeli government that we need to watch out for, but all of the Israeli corporations that have got contracts, for example, like doing the billing for all of our telephone companies, which essentially gives them, incredible intelligence knowledge, because they know all of the telephone calls that have occurred, who called who, when, how long the conversations were. That includes government agencies, individuals, and they also have other contracts that give them access to the telephone equipment, and they virtually have bugged the entire planet's telephone communications through these companies.
I have a book out called Mystery Babylon, and in that I've documented the whole Rothschild banking scam and the Homeland Security attack on the veterans and Christian identity and everybody else. But after I wrote that about what happened to me after 2004, I referred to 9/11. I'm sorry, in 2004 that happened, but I referred to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning, and I pointed out that Larry Silverstein, another dual citizen, had to have the buildings rigged to with explosives before 9/11, since we got building number 7 there. That was in March of 2004. In April of 2004, the story broke in New York Times about what you just said. The NSA, George Bush allowed the NSA to tap everybody's phones, but NSA didn't tap anybody's phones. There were 2 Israeli companies that were in charge of this operation, Converse and Amdocs, and in May 20th, 2004, I called home and asked my son, where do you need me to go next, son? I was publishing 2 magazines. I was working on my 2 fiction books, and I was talking about Liberty Villages. And I said, this was, I said, well, son, he said, where are you, Dad? I said, I'm on the north side of Phoenix, Sacred Skin Tattoo Parlor. I'll go down 24th Street to McDowell, turn left, go to the wheel shop. 2 blocks before I got to McDowell, I was hit by a woman with no driver's license, no insurance, in a borrowed car, who I never saw again, who never came into court, who we never ever saw again. And
that's a common technique. William Pollock, that I told you about, his friend was killed in the exact same way. Some man T-boned him at an intersection. Both of them went to the hospital. The other person left the hospital, sneaking out. All of the identification he provided was false, and he was never heard from again.
Yeah,
that's a common assassination technique.
After they rushed me to the hospital and kept me unconscious for 3 months for 3 broken ribs. And they said I had a severe head injury too, which I did. But after I became conscious, after I was allowed to regain consciousness, after my family told them, take him off the drugs, take him off the drugs, take him off the drugs, a number of times in 3 hospitals. In the 3rd hospital, they took me off the drugs, and the next day, or within 2 days, 2 men showed up in blue pinstripe suits asking me if I'd been hallucinating, and I had, but I hadn't told anybody. They said, you can thank us for that. Yeah, who are you? We're CIA. Now, there's a couple of things that I haven't been able to identify and tell people. I can't tell people whether the government took over the mafia or the mafia took over the government. I can't tell them whether Israel controls the United States or whether the United States controls Israel. And, yeah. Which is it? What's happening here? And I don't believe there's any difference between the CIA and the Mossad. They're the same. They're operating the same. They've got and they tried to tell us that back in World War II. They said these, or after World War II, in the Cold War. They said we can, yeah. We can, and by the way, the Homeland Security meeting that I filmed back in about 2002 says that we're in for a long war, and the enemy's weak, and it may be longer than the Cold War. So, what are we looking at? Well, in case of a single,
that's one of the reasons why I wrote the essentially it came out of the Bush's, because this is a critical time, and I wrote the article on what Americans need to know about death squads. You really need to get that legislation that's in the article passed under emergency clauses that will put it into effect immediately, because the only chance you have of surviving the death squad operations is if prohibiting death squads is turned into a state legal issue, and the state police are given responsibility for detecting and dealing with death squads that come and operate in your state.
We've talked about this on the show a number of times. It's called gang stalking. And it's an organized thing here. And I'm sure that some of these people are Jewish. They have infiltrated some of the biker communities, and you know, of course, they're on our chat rooms all the time. You know, they call them Sanayan, which you know, and they're paid to get on the internet to promote Israel, to promote the whole Zionist agenda. And we got it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
At one time, there was actually a website where you could go and sign up and volunteer as one of these people to monitor local newspapers for stories that did not reflect well on Israel, and write letters. You know, it provided instructions on how to write letters to support Israel to your local newspapers and stuff. And there was actually a website recruiting these people at one point. Last time I checked, it was not there, but they may have put it up somewhere else. But yes, they recruit not only Jews, but the Zionist Christians that believe that the current state of Israel is the you know, one prophesied in the to be, you know, lead up to Armageddon, but they're just absolutely wrong, even relying on prophecy, because the Jewish prophecy states that Israel will be created by the hand of